Welcome to the Read Your Keys podcast. I'm your host, Joel Lopez. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today, my guest is Mr. Andrew Loeschner. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, Andrew, you can find him on Twitter. That's how I find most of my guests. You can find him at Andrew Loeschner, Loeschner. He gives based. Is that what it's called? Based?
Yeah, that's what usually people say.
Based commentary. Based commentary Loeschner. Is that what we're going to call you?
Yeah, right. That's what I'll interject that right into the middle of my name. ABL.
My initials. So what is based? Because I'm kind of like I think I'm a boomer, right? Like that's like the older guy. Like, hey, you're out of touch. I'm kind of a boomer. So like I see like people say post based. Like there was a guy during like the Cal Berkeley riots, like in 2015, and there was this guy based Stickman, and he was like out there just like beating people. I was like, what does based mean? Like, but it was like it's like a compliment. So I was like, I don't even know what that means, but I guess it's a good thing.
I think I looked it up on Urban Dictionary one time because no, because like you know what it is, you understand the context of it, you see it in context, and you go like, okay, I know that this is a good thing, I know it means that that's awesome, but how do you define it or explain it to a friend who doesn't know? And it was like, well, let me look it up online. Urban Dictionary updates everything quickly, so I looked, and it was basically something that's politically incorrect in a good way.
Okay,
is kind of what it is. So like I just tweeted earlier late last night about how I just found out that apparently Russia banned Pornhub back in 2016, and I didn't know this. And then I wrote based under it because it is, and it's this very politically incorrect thing that we think is awesome. So I try to give that kind of commentary, so to speak. It's just commentary that's not necessarily within the politically correct guidelines. I don't try to deviate from it for shock purposes or anything like that. I just do it because I think it's the truth. And then I think it's the truth, so that's why I post it, and people seem to agree. I actually just saw that because I was kind of scrolling through your timeline, kind of getting ready for this, and I saw that. I was like, oh, I like this. Yeah, they banned porn. So so I followed you, so I kind of see what you post in you're a Christian, so am I. Where do you kind of fall on like I like the idea of banning porn, but I also like the idea of free will. Like, I think of like Jesus, and Jesus knew that Judas was going to betray him, but he still kind of let him do what Judas was going to do and use it for his glory. So I always kind of go back and forth between like, yeah, I like the idea of banning this because that's not good for a society to indulge in porn. Like that's not good, but also there's the free will part of me that's like I wish people didn't have the desire, so that they could get rid of it on its own. Yeah, it comes down to that whole conversation about legislating morality. And that's something I've kind of gone back and forth with. I grew up very libertarian and very much like, let everyone do whatever they want as long as it doesn't affect anyone else. But then you see what that's kind of done for our culture more or less, and you see it's just like it leads to entropy inherently. It kind of just, everything just starts deteriorating because everyone just starts choosing more and more degenerate things. And, it's, you get to a point where only the parents, and creating a bulwark against that kind of descent into madness is really difficult. It starts in the home. It starts with good parenting. That's really the only place that is super effective. But it does come down to a point. I'm like, where should the state get involved? And I think in certain instances, we'll go directly to Pornhub. There's very clear instances of human trafficking, child porn, rape being posted on that platform. So you look at that platform, and they're basically, then it goes to politically that whole, are we a platform or are we a publisher? Are we actually approving the content and therefore responsible for it, or are we just an open platform that, hey, anyone can post their videos to? But there have been so many instances where this has happened. People have caught it, people have complained, and they have had to complain numerous times and go up the chain in order to get their own rape video removed from it. So you go, okay, this is not a good company. They're profiting off this kind of exploitation. So maybe the conversation around banning porn as a whole versus banning certain porn companies is very difficult.
You say OnlyFans is degenerate, but it seems like everyone who posts on OnlyFans, and it seems that way. I don't know if it truly is. It's kind of doing it of their own free will, and they're very much like it's their own content, and that's more or less it.
They're more in charge of it. Yeah, I'm not.
It would seem that way.
Yeah, but I guess you bring up the point of like, hey, if you know you have rape videos and people who are saying like, hey, this is me and this is not supposed to be on there, and they're profiting from that, then I guess that'd kind of be like the
it's the line in the sand. Well, right
it's kind of like the Al Capone didn't get in trouble or convicted for all the stuff he did. He got hit for tax evasion. So if we can hit Pornhub for, you know, rape videos, like, hey, come on, like what decent person would support that or be okay with it? I guess that makes it less of a free will argument. It's like, no, this is criminal. It's like, okay, yeah, like let's do it. I think that's a easier pill to swallow for like a person who's like, you know, leaning towards the, like you said, the libertarian free will side. Like, hey, no, there's rape videos. Are you okay with that? No, because you're harming somebody. Okay, like, so yeah, let's deal with that.
Exactly. And you know, there's that real conversation that if you ban porn, people are going to find it anyway. It's going to make a massive black market. It's barely even going to be a black market because there's so much on the internet now. It's kind of like a can of worms you open. Like, you're not getting them all back in there. Like, I saw a stat in the comments of Instagram, and it might be a total BS stat or it might be true, but they said like 37% of the internet is porn. And if that's true, I wouldn't really be shocked. I haven't done any research on that, so it might be total bogus. But if it is true, it wouldn't really surprise me. And so there's so much content out there. You can't kind of go around. It's difficult to go around playing whack-a-mole, but then just because it's difficult doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
It's not worthy.
So right. It's a whole back and forth. It's not something I dedicate too much time to thinking to, because sometimes you have to operate within the parameters of reality and go, it's probably never going to get banned here. And even if it does, we're probably going to face so many problems in the aftermath of that through a black market that you're better off doing what David does and just working with guys and seeing if you can destroy the industry by getting rid of the audience.
Right. That's why I appreciate Tim Riegel and David. And I appreciate David's perspective because he's a, you know, young man. Like, he grew up with the internet. And so did you, right? Like that was how, like, how old were you when you got a smartphone?
About 16.
Oh, so you were kind of
I didn't get it until later.
Older,
I was older, 16, 17.
And was that probably wasn't the norm for your peer group?
No, it was the norm because I was homeschooled. So most of my friends didn't have smartphones until about that same time period. So we all grew up just running around in the woods. You know, a bunch of madmen.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got to kind of avoid that. I mean, I had my PlayStation and stuff like that.
Yeah, but that wasn't connected to the internet, right?
No, not at the time. And I mean, our family computer is right smack in the middle of the house. I mean, it's right here to my right. And as you can see, the kitchen's behind me and all that kind of stuff. So there's no way you're looking at porn.
Yeah, you'd be like, mom's over there.
Yeah, mom's going to catch you. Turn around and be like, what?
Little Andy, what are you doing over there? Just looking at some porn, Mom.
Try to explain that away.
Definitely not happening in that house.
No, but you'd be surprised what some people try to pull off. I used to work at a public library, and they have like those computers out in the open area, and they're very open area, and like people would still get caught watching it. You're like, really? Like right here? So, what is it? Just looking over your shoulder. It's so obvious.
So go to horny jail. Go to horny jail.
Bonk.
Yeah, bonk. Go to horny jail, man. Like, what are you doing, son? Like, well, I guess if they don't have any internet, like they're real thirsty. Like, they're trying to really trying to see some nipples.
Yeah, right. I haven't seen any shops in the area, so you can't go and buy a magazine.
Do they still sell magazines?
I have no idea.
You're asking
the wrong person.
Because that was like my era. Like, man, you had to go in and get a magazine. You had to be 18, or like Blockbuster.
Hide in a trench coat with your buddies.
Blockbuster didn't carry porn, so like you had to go to like the local video. Did you have like local video stores when you were growing up, or there
was a Blockbuster, funnily enough, not too far away from me. So I vaguely remember going in there maybe once or twice. So that or Crystal Video too.
Okay, so that was probably like your local one, the Crystal Video. Yeah. Like they would have like the curtain, and I was like, this is where the adults go. I remember I was like a teenager, early teens or 12, and I remember like, you know, I couldn't go behind the curtain, and I remember this dude. He was walking in, and he went behind the curtain. He's like, "I'm gonna watch something tonight," and I was like, "Dude, this guy's weird." I knew what he was looking for. Like, dude, this is a horny dude right here, man. Get out of here.
That's hysterical. Dude's down bad.
Yeah. So that didn't, because I've read that, like, you know, kids get exposed to porn so early because, you know, they have the smartphone. So were you able to avoid a lot of that? Because it's like, yeah, you know, like I don't have the technology to be able to mess with it. And, you know, I don't know if like you have older brothers or anything like that, but that's kind of like, hey, I have older brothers and, you know, their friends have stuff. So like, that's how I can, you know, check out the stuff that I'm not supposed to, because that's kind of what we did. It was like, oh, you know, you had older friends or whatever. So that's how you would be able to check it out. But if that's not happening, then you're kind of what's the word? Sheltered from it. I guess that's the only thing I can think of. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was ultimately. I mean, I'm the oldest, so I didn't have any older brothers. And, you know, I didn't get the smartphone until I was about 16, 17. Mm-hmm. And it's just, you know, I didn't have a friend group that was really in that realm. You know, it was a whole bunch of homeschool Christian kids too. So, I mean, I know some of them, you know, could struggle with their own addiction and they probably did behind the scenes, but it was not something like, I have some buddies that I met in college and they kind of just talk openly like, oh yeah, you know, I watch porn. And I'm just like, this is normal to you guys. That's a little weird.
It's strange.
So on my end, I was kind of able to sidestep that whole addiction and not have to fight it. So as much as I appreciate David's services, whenever he gets talking about it, it's not really something I can relate to, which ultimately I'm grateful for.
Your friend group, did you guys do like pods? Because I know that like homeschooling is becoming a lot more prevalent now, and so one of the concerns for families is like, okay, like I don't want to do this by myself. Like, let me get together with other homeschool families. You guys kind of did that on your own because it was like, these are other families in my church and they're homeschooling, or was it just like, hey, we're homeschooling, and through, you know, just conversations or whatever, you found out, oh, like this family, you know, the Smith family down the way, they also homeschool, so we'll get it together. How did that work out for you guys?
So there was a homeschooling group in our county. So they kind of occupied the northern part of our county and the southern part of the one above us. So it was an entire kind of organized group of people. And so, I mean, everyone kind of did their own curriculums at home and that kind of thing. But many of the parents inside the group organized their own kind of trips and stuff and then blasted that out to the group. And so, you know, it's like, oh, there's a homeschool trip to the airport to, you know, go into the control tower, or there's a trip to, you know, wherever down to the city for a museum or something like that. So there were some organized environments like that. And then we did have the co-op kind of thing on Fridays that you could join as well. And that was a whole parents teaching classes that usually are better taught in a group setting. So something like drama, obviously, or something along those lines, or even phys ed, stuff that it's a little bit trickier to do one-on-one at home.
When
phys ed, obviously not so much, but things like that, like drama and stuff.
How old were you when you guys started doing that? Because I mean, older kids, I think, would probably do a little better in that environment.
Yeah, it was awesome. The co-op thing started around the time I was 13, 14, and we joined around that time, you know, 15, 16, 17.
Okay, yeah, that
was 15, 16.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's especially when you need to kind of have a peer group, right? Like you're 13. It's like, I don't want to be hanging with my, you know, little brother all the time or my little sister. It's like, you know, I want having the interactions, because, you know, that's one of the criticisms of homeschooling, right? It's like, hey, you're just always in your little bubble with your brother and your sister, and you're awkward, and like you don't know how to deal with other people. Would you guys go like one? So you did like your Friday kind of co-op, and then the other days you kind of did your own thing.
Yeah, so Fridays was co-op with that group at a big church, or the church was where we held it, and then Monday through Thursday and even parts of Friday were just our own stuff. So we were just doing that at home, you know, popping up in the science book, reading through it, doing all the problems at the end of the chapter, whatever the case was, and then there was all sorts of extracurricular stuff too. I mean, I was part of a music program that I started going to at the end of middle school through high school. So I started as a student there, and then I started helping teaching some of the drum classes.
Oh, you do drums?
We had that. Yeah, I did drums. I can kind of play guitar. Used to learn piano classically. All of those are kind of fallen off, so I'm not particularly skilled at any of them anymore.
But you were?
But so we did that. Yeah, that was halfway decent at piano.
It's not like riding a bike.
No, I mean, if I were to get back on, it would come back to me pretty quickly.
But it would take you.
I'd have to practice quite a bit.
Yeah. I always kind of wondered that. Like my parents, they kind of wanted me to play like an instrument, but I was like, that's for nerds. I don't want to do that. And then now I'm like, man, I wish I could would have done that. Like I think I had a tweet like if you're an ugly dude, you should learn how to play an instrument. And I think I had a picture of Bob Dylan. I had a picture of Bob Dylan. I was like, this dude is ugly, man. But like he's got chicks and dudes at the bus just like banging on the windows trying to see this dude.
Yeah, no, it's a skill for sure. The another thing was just organized sports teams. Plenty of us were part of those. I was part of a swim team. I did track for years. So there's so many ways to socialize your kid and kind of get them out. And then most of us go to church. So Sundays you went to church anyway, and there's all the kids that went there. And then you had youth group on Sunday nights or Wednesday nights. I went to my own youth group that was on Sunday nights, and my buddy's youth group on Wednesday nights. So I had like all these kind of groups that I was interacting with. So you come out okay when you're dealing with all that.
For the sports, was that all through the homeschool stuff, or was that through like the high schools would allow you guys to participate on the track team and the swim team? Because I know a lot of the David, time, and he said like before they were allowed to, but then they had a rule. So I guess county by county, state by state, it really varies.
Yeah, that's exactly how it goes. In our environment, I think you can do some stuff with some of the high schools. We didn't. The swim team was through the town's community center, so it was kind of like the town's swim team. And then the track team was this private one. It was this he was the coach for a private school, and he just decided to start his own track team. And it wasn't explicitly meant to be a homeschooled group track team, but so many of the homeschoolers joined it almost became one in a way. Not that we pushed anyone out, but we just like the vast majority of the kids by the end of it were all homeschooled and part of that track team. And he was a Christian, so it was an explicitly Christian track team too. So it was called Wings Like Eagles, and it was based on that verse.
For the kingdom, son.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I've always thought about that because like the flexibility in the schedule. Would you guys be able to like have practice like earlier or like at off times when like other kids were in school? So it's like, oh, we can run practice right now because we have a flexible schedule.
Hypothetically, we could have. I don't think we did because obviously our coach had work at the school. So then it was kind of like after hours. But the flexibility of schedule was awesome for pretty much everything else in our lives. I mean, going out shopping, every time I see people shopping on a weekend, I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you? Why would you do that to yourself? I work in a store. I work in retail, and we're in the kind of retail where people have to be serviced. It's not just like, hey, how you doing? We look over there for what you want. It's like you got to walk people through the process beginning to end. And Sundays are madness, and people are waiting around. They can't really, a couple people can, but most people can't shop for themselves in my work, my line of work. So it's like, is there a list I sign up onto? And I was like, no, unfortunately, you're just going to have to wait until one of our sales guys frees up. And you shouldn't have come shopping on a Sunday in the middle of prom season for a suit. It's probably not a great idea.
How is that with like prom and stuff like that? Like our boys are they still like going to prom? Like are you still, because have you been at this I've
been doing this job for about 3 years now. So I've been through the prom seasons of 2018, 2019. Obviously 2020 got blown up, so nothing happened, and then it's back with a vengeance this year. So I've gone through 3 whole prom seasons, and the boys this year they're going. I mean, obviously I don't see the ones that aren't going because then they wouldn't be coming to me for suits and tuxedos and things.
But
like
I guess
that.
you would see,
but I see a good number.
Like hey, we're crazy packed. Whereas 3 years ago, pre-Rona, this is kind of what it looked like. And now it's always been a big industry. If nothing else, because the girls kind of drag them along. Because funnily enough, you hear all the stories about weddings being like, it's the woman's big day. But what you don't know is they treat prom the exact same way. It's all about, it's kind of sad in a way. I mean, I understand when, let's say you're the boyfriend, she's the girlfriend, you go to different schools, she invites you to her prom. That's kind of one thing. Like, all right, you're a guest at that point.
even if you are dating. But sometimes they go to the same school and it's their prom together, and the girl, everything is about matching her dress and doing this and making her happy. And even the parents are like, yeah, just make her happy. I'm like, come on, man. I actually like got real with one of the kids because he really wanted this white tuxedo. He was going for like a James Bond kind of look, white tux with the black lapels, looked really, really cool. And the girl was not a fan. So he's about to take his tux and leave, and he comes back to me. He goes, hey, man, do you have any jackets that are black? I'm like, I can't place a reorder for you for anything. I might have some stuff off the wall that'll look halfway decent, but, you know, you seem to really like the white one. He's like, I do, but she just won't stop bugging me about it. I'm like, all right. I set him up in a fitting room with the black jacket, and I kind of like took him aside and got real with him. I said, look, man, as a married man to you now in like high school, happy wife, happy life is bullshit. Don't ever let this happen again in a way. Because like you're going to be miserable the rest of your life if you constantly bend over backwards trying to make her happy when there are things, when this is your prom as well. And this is as much your day as it is hers. You know, too many guys are obsessed with making the woman in their lives happy. And there's a line between, I want to make you happy because I love you, and I want to make you happy because I'm scared of what happens if I don't.
That's an important realization, because I've been married. This is year 16 for this will be year 16 for me. But I never really thought deeply about like happy, because it was like I was already busy. I would just do stuff like naturally, like, oh, like I don't want to do that. Like I remember when I first started dating my wife, I was like, I don't do Valentine's Day. So like if you have a problem with like if that's a big deal to you, like I don't do that. But for me, like, well, of course I want my wife to be happy. So that's how I always took it. It's like, of course, like I'm a man. I want my wife to be happy, because I feel like, if she's happy, then that means I'm doing the right things. That's kind of how I took it. But I see that there's people who are like, I'm gonna put everything and be a doormat to her so she can be happy. And that's where I understand like that's where, like, this teenage boy, he's like, yeah, bro, that's not the way. You're gonna be a doormat all the time. And it's like, yeah, this is your day too. Like my wedding day, like, like it was, yeah, like I was really happy. Like it was probably one of the best days of my life. But like, I wanted her to get the things that she wanted, and like the things that I want is like, hey, these are the things I want. I want good food, and I want the DJ to be slamming. Other than that, like I don't care. Like, but there was things that I wanted. Everything else, it's like, hey, these are just matters of taste. I don't have a dog in the fight. Like I don't have any kind of attachment to any of it. So have at it. But yeah, you're good call on your boy. And then, so did you get married? Because like I know you had gotten engaged. So
yeah, okay, yeah. So we had a small courthouse legal ceremony in December. One, because we figured it was time, and two, it just helps with immigration stuff as well. We're like, let's not wait on this because it'll give us a head start. And then just like everyone else who kind of did it during COVID, like we'll do like I said, small legal thing, and then have some regular kind of bash when everything opens up again. So we planned for October for the kind of normal thing.
Well,
so
congratulations,
I was kind of doing this thing. Yeah. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. I was doing this thing on Twitter. I was like calling her my girl because I couldn't call her my fiance, but I didn't want everyone to know it was my wife. And I was like, you know what? Let's just throw it out there. Yeah. it's done. And so that's kind of where it stands right now. And so because there's a religious element to the upcoming ceremony, it's going to feel much more real than it does at the moment, but it's still pretty real.
Like I didn't have to deal with what you had to deal with, and like Corona and all that stuff. But I had already felt married to my wife like before we got married. So when we got married, it was like, yeah, this like, of course, like this is what we had visions for. So it didn't feel strange. Like wearing my ring was really weird because I don't wear any jewelry. Like I never wore any jewelry. So wearing my ring was really strange at first. And now, like when I take it off, it's like, oh man, like where's my ring at? Like it. So how does that feel? Is that how you feel right now?
No, that was perfect. It's such a good description. The whole, we already felt married, and so you kind of standing there on the other side,
Mm-hmm.
and you go, it doesn't feel much different because we were kind of already like this anyway. The ring thing, I've actually been wearing a ring for a while, so I got really used to that. So just keeping this thing on has been super easy. So, but I do feel the same way now when it's off. When I don't have my ring and when I don't have my watch, I feel really, really.
Oh, you wear a
weird,
watch?
and I hate it.
Yeah,
I do wear a watch all the time. I mean, I take it off to sleep, but otherwise, yeah. Like sometimes I'll forget it when I'm going to work, and I find myself looking for it all day long, and I can't find it. And I'm like, this sucks. Just there's a weight on my arm that feels good now because you're used to it.
The So how long did you? Well, let me ask. This is something I wanted to talk to you about because a lot of like how you're early 20s, right?
So, yeah, I'm 22. I'll be 23 in August.
So like your peer group, they seem to be going a lot like online and meeting their significant others or spouses online, and I'm all for that because it's like, hey, if people are getting married, like I think that's good for society. But like I heard you on I forgot the name of the podcast, but sorry, and I don't mean disrespect by that, but
no, it's all good. No, not at all.
Because you've been on a few, so
I made the rounds.
But you met your wife in person, and I think that's becoming. I don't know if that's rare, but I because Twitter's kind of a bubble, right? So it's like you kind of hear that stuff, and I'm here with my family, so like I don't really hear these stories so much anymore. And like the people who have gotten married that I know that I'm close to, they also got married online, and they were older. So like when I hear your your story, it's like, oh, like you met in person. I find it refreshing because I actually just saw a tweet of yours that you're kind of a romantic, and I think I am also. Like there's a part of me that is deeply romantic, and maybe that's why I like the Bible. That's why I'm family oriented, because it's like there's, I don't know. I think these things matter, but I think there's like also the way that I met my wife. Like I saw my wife, and it was just like, oh wow, like I really need to know who this is. Like what was that? Like, and I think there's like magic there. Like that's all I could say, because like you can see somebody's picture, right? Like I have an experience of you. I can see you on the screen, but like it's a lot different when you feel somebody in person. And I think that like for men and women is like huge, because like, you can't just be like, oh, this guy doesn't have the right height, weight, or whatever. Swipe on to the next one. Like when you see somebody in person, like them and their beauty and their flaws, all of that together, it's like it makes something beautiful. Even the flaws. What was that like for you when you saw your now wife?
That was, I always try to describe it to her because she always wants to hear it, and it's really hard to describe because it's very similar to what you said, and I'm not trying to copy you. It's the truth. There was a kind of magic to it in a way. It wasn't super sparkles in the air or anything, but when I first met her, so we went to this community college because both of us were like, let's save money, let's get a decent degree. So I had not sunk, I had put 1 year into that college, and so I was on my second year and she was just a freshman, and we met. We were both part of the honors society. We were taking honors classes, so that gave us access to this special kind of lounge at the top floor of the library. Sounds fancier than it really is. There's no. I always had a vision of like a giant mahogany table with leather chairs and like a fireplace. I thought that would have been the coolest thing ever. Like, welcome to our smart people club. It was a little less glamorous than that, but still like big green leather chairs and stuff around these kind of plastic tables. And I was just chatting with some friends, and I was kind of joking around, and I saw her kind of sitting in the corner chatting with one of her friends, and she thought that whatever I was joking about was hilarious. She was laughing her butt off, and because of that, I started paying attention to her, and I could tell there was something really different about her because of the way she looked, the way she was dressed, the way she carried herself was so kind of self-assured in a way. She wasn't the it girl. She wasn't the one that felt super confident and in charge, because she was like, she had learned English 3 years prior, not even like by just moving to Colorado and being like, well, you got to figure it out now. So she wasn't super confident in general, but she seemed very much like she didn't have anything she was trying to prove to people. Too many girls try to put themselves out there. They're like, look at me, look at me. You see the clothes they wear, you see the way they carry themselves. I'm like, okay, they're dying for attention. And she was not one of those people, but she also wasn't the kind of person that was hiding from it either. Like the friend she was talking to, kind of insecure girl, always had the hood on her hoodie up, even indoors. It was kind of this like whole don't notice me thing going on. And you feel kind of bad for people like that. And so that wasn't the case at all. I could tell this girl's different. And I had this irresistible urge to get to know her. And so normally I'm the kind of person, if I know you well enough and we pass each other in the hall, I'll say, hey man, what's up? Most of the time I don't care. We'll just walk past each other. And I was sitting down chatting with a friend that I ran into at the school going like, hey man, I remember you from youth group. And so we're just sitting on the floor next to the locker rooms waiting for his class to start. And we're chatting and she walks by and talking on the phone and I called her out by name and she was like so shocked that I did that. And it was just, I felt this irresistible urge to get to know her. That's why I called her out because I wanted to tease her and talk to her. And it just kind of went from there. We got to talking a lot, and then she somehow found me on Instagram and messaged me, and that just went this back and forth, and we got to talking and teasing each other. And next thing you know, I was like, I really like you. You date me now. And she didn't really have much choice in the matter.
Yeah, no, but I think that kind of describes it perfectly. It's just like there's this draw, and you can't explain it. Like I'm from Southern California. Like I've seen plenty of hot girls, pretty girls, all that. But when I saw my wife, it was like, this is something else. Like you can't explain it. And then once we started dating, I'm a peaceful guy. Like, I'm a restful guy, but I always kind of felt like my soul was at peace when I was with her. Like, in my faith and everything, like that was like I was good. It wasn't about her, but I always felt at peace when I was with her because my wife and I were long distance, so I would go months without seeing her, and then when I would see her, it was like,
that's hard.
Yeah. But like I'm a man, right? Just like you are. I think that forced us to like really like talk. Like we talked on the phone. That's all we had. Like, so I know that I can talk to my wife because that's all I had. So I know that I like her, but it's not just like, oh, that she was beautiful. She's beautiful. Like the physical attraction was there. That was the easy part. But that forced us to kind of build all the other stuff. Like, what do you really think about stuff? Like we wrote letters, and I saw that you tweeted out, like you saw some pictures and you're like, oh, this makes you want to write letters. It's like, yeah, like write letters, because like we have all of our letters that we wrote to each other. Like it's years worth of letters, because that's all we had. But that, that like when people talk about like, how do you have a good woman, or she'll leave you if, somebody else comes along. It's like, well, she's invested a lot in me. And I don't think she's going to just leave because somebody else has more money. Because there's plenty of other people who have made more money, who make more money than I do. So, but is she really going to give all that away because somebody else has more money? It's like, no, we go deep. And I think that was one of the cool things about you guys too, is because like for my wedding, my grandparents were there. Her grandparents that were still alive were there. It's like when you get married young, you don't think about that. But like as you and your wife get along, and the time comes when they pass along, it's like, hey, it meant a lot that that our grandparents were there, and that they know you, right? Like when her grandparents pass away, hopefully they live a long life. But when the day comes, they'll be like, and her grandparents passed away, like you'll feel it too, because it's like I knew them. They weren't just like, hey, we met when we were like 30, and like I heard stories about your grandparents. It's like, no, I went over to the family dinners, and I hugged your abuela, because you're Latina, right? So I hugged abuelo and abuela, and I had her beans or whatever, and they were delicious, and I'm gonna miss her. Like that, it means a lot. Like people, you don't realize until that time comes.
Yeah, it's that's one of the awesome things about doing everything young. So like I said, I work in the prom and wedding industry. I work in suits, and so I see the average age that people are getting married now is about between 27 and 35. And that's starting to get old. So then you work with the fathers, and I'm like, you look like a grandpa now, but you're just the father of the bride or the father of the groom. Like, you don't look.
So they're what? Like,
I mean, they're in their
60s,
they're in their 60s now. You know, some of them are in their 70s almost. Like, it's getting there. And so I'm like, it's in my mind, it's getting late for some of these folks. You know, I'm like 30 years old. I was joking with one of the parents one time. I said, like, they go, yeah, this is one of our daughter's wedding. And I said, oh, you know, is she? I kind of was joking. I said, is she the younger or the older of the two? And they go, she's the younger, and the older is not married yet. And I was like, oh, is that a point of contention? She goes, yeah, a little bit. It's just, there's so much with women in particular, so many of them. I don't know who's the one that's pushing for the later marriage, if it's the guy, the girl in general, or if it's a combination of the two. But there's too much of that going on, and you get a lot of women now left in their kind of 30s who are like looking around like, well, there's nothing here.
Well, because I think the guys that want to get married, we get married young. Like, I got married young. I was early.
Yeah, exactly.
I was 23 when I got married.
Yeah, you find what you want, you just lock that down, and they're done. And that's why, like, people are shocked when they go to. So my wife, for the time being, works in a grocery store, and, you know, obviously she has a constant rotation of customers coming kind of through, chatting with her, and she, you know, sometimes every now and then some guy will try to pick her up, and she's like, I'm married, and they don't believe her. They're like, you're lying. And she's like, no, like, she'll show them the ring. She's like, no, I'm married. And, like, they just can't believe it. It's like, that young, you know, you're 21. She's like,
you have your whole life ahead of you.
People like that. Yeah, exactly. People just get locked up real fast. And that's kind of what I tell women and guys is, like, if you get your stuff together, you're going to get you're going to get the good ones really fast. And then they get taken, you know, because you have to be decisive about that kind of thing. You can't wait around and play the game of, well, I don't know, I don't want to commit, because someone else is going to come along and they're going to know exactly what they want. And that's going to be your girl. And if you don't have the guts to go and actually settle down with her and take it the next step, someone else is going to, and eventually she's going to get tired. My wife has a cousin who's getting married a few months after us. And that cousin has been with this guy for 14 years already. And they're only now just getting married. And this guy proposed after I did in July of last year. So I think he probably proposed in like October of last year, after 14 years. And you're like, that's the point where the girl starts like pressuring the guy, like, come on, like, just do it. You know, we're basically there already. It is sad to see that. Women want to be.
You put pressure on them, man.
Yeah, right. Women they want to be desired. And who can fault them for that? So when you have to pressure your guy to actually, you know, marry you, then you don't feel like you're wanted. It's like when you tell someone like, hey, I really like, you never, it's like when my girl, cause she loves flowers, and sometimes I get busy, sidetracked, and even when I want to get her flowers, I don't. And so then she'll say, look, babe, like, I really like flowers. You know that. And then I go out and get her flowers, but it's like, yeah, but you're doing that because I told you to now. So it's not the same. It's not special. You know, I'm like, well, God damn it, woman, what do you want? You know, but I get her point. She's right. You want the other person to come up with it on their own because they care about you, not because you're pushing them to do that.
You know what I thought? Because I got married young, but I had the benefit of, I had parents who had I thought a good marriage. Like, my parents are still married. But I saw them go through ups and downs. I have a good mom. I have a very loving mom. When I would, you know, go to visit family, my tias were, you know, awesome to me. A lot of them were all married and stayed married. So, like, you know, I had that frame of reference where I could filter out, because, you know, I didn't just date anybody. Like, it took there was a high threshold to, like, for me to even date somebody. And then once I dated them, like I wouldn't say it was a very high standard. We'll just say that. So I wasn't just gonna date anybody just to date, because I thought that was dumb. And also, like, I'm a man, so, like, if I'm just dating and just doing stuff, like, I could get myself in trouble. So don't, like, for me, it was like, I'm not gonna do that. You know, I don't want to end up with some girl pregnant. Like, plus I don't have any money, so, like, no. But all that aside, I feel like that that's one of the benefits of, like you don't realize, like, the gifts that you have, because, like, they come, like, it was normal, right? Like, I'm assuming your parents have a good marriage, because if they didn't, like, I don't think that you'd want to get married young. That's like I wouldn't want that, because I saw my parents screaming at each other and they're divorced and everything's a mess. But like if you have a family that, you know, loving mom and dad, and you see like, hey, they look like they genuinely like each other and they treat us well and my siblings well, and they seem like this is a good thing to do, so I want it too. And I see every, like, I'm a football guy, so like I'll use this as an analogy. Like I've seen good players before, so when I see someone, I was like, I recognize the qualities here, so there's potential here, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, no, my parents have been married for about 27 years now. I think they just passed that anniversary, so they've been together for a while. And it's just, my parents are the kind of people, they're not particularly romantic people. They're not the kind of people that like to go out on trips. If you're on the outside looking in at the way they operate, it looks a little strange and it looks very almost boring, but they found a relationship that really works. It's not like my mom is the kind of person who wants to go on trips all the time, and then my dad's a guy who's like, no, I just want to stay home. They work together pretty well. And I've seen, once again, like always, you see the ups and downs, and it's not always pretty. And I've seen my mom very unhappy, and I've seen my dad pretty unhappy too. But overall, they've, that just sets realistic expectations at the same time too. And that's important for you to see when things aren't going so great, because then you don't feel like you're such a screw up when things aren't going so great on your end either. Like, okay, this is normal. This happens. People, whatever your parents do, you basically consider normal, no matter what that is when you're growing up. And so like you can go on Reddit and see a bunch of stories. Like you could go on Ask Reddit and be like, what's something you thought was normal, but turns out really isn't. And people will tell you the most screwed up things that they thought were normal because their families did it, and then realized, like, they went to their friend's house and were like, oh no, I didn't realize you were supposed to have your own bedroom with your siblings and not get jammed into a closet or something like that. You'll see things that will blow your mind and kind of frighten you.
Well, I think that's kind of
so the parents really do set the standard.
Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of the thing with the internet, right? Like you hear stuff and like, that sounds pretty crazy. Like I've never come across that in real life, so I'm gonna kind of dismiss what you're saying right now, because you're you're kind of, well, because you had posted that the picture with you and your wife, and then somebody was like, hey, this is scandalous. It's like, this is a wife. Stop being a nerd.
That was funny. My Adam Lane Smith kind of broke it down for me and explained to me why certain Catholics seem to be so hardcore and certain things like that, and why others are so liberal. He was kind of describing the schism to me, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Because, so much his claim, bottom line, very, very briefly, was there's a section of the Catholic Church that's kind of fallen away and become kind of liberal and kind of accepting of things that are not traditionally Catholic. And then in response, there's this kind of new group of Catholics that are the kind of exact opposite. They're this kind of almost puritanical, right. If you show your ankles, you're sinning kind of thing. Maybe not quite so literally, but you know what I mean. So that kind of person stumbled across my feed and kind of went off because one of the people he follows retweeted it, and so he's trying to hold his friend to a higher standard. And I'm like, that guy's my friend. Like, we've talked on the phone. This is not one of my like random Twitter mutuals where it's like, oh, you're cool. Like, I've actually talked to him on the phone multiple times, so we know each other. He lives like an hour away, not even. So we know each other pretty well. So you're not going to throw shade at that guy and think that he's going to take your side over mine. Yeah. But anyway, the good thing, going all the way back to early dating, one of the great things is that women are really, really good at seeing potential in men. They're not – so many people talk about hypergamy and gold digging and things like that, especially in our kind of corner of masculine lifestyle commentary. There's this fear of like, well, she's going to leave you when she finds someone better. It's like, well, no, women tend to be really, really good at scoping out what your potential is. And that's kind of, I tweeted about that recently. I said, potential's funny because you can't quantify it, but it's really, really important. A lot of women make a lot of decisions based off that. When my girl started dating me, I didn't have a job. I had just left my summer job because it was just that, a summer job. I had quit my small part-time library job because I couldn't do that and the demanding summer job together. So next thing you know, September rolled around and I'm left with nothing. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. I don't even know how to, like, every job I've ever had has kind of fallen into my lap because someone was like, hey, I got a job for you. You want it? So I'm like, I don't even know how to look for a job. And so she didn't care because she liked me and she could see the kind of potential I had. And so she was like, whatever, we went down to New York City because we lived close. So we would take the train down there and we just walk around Central Park. And all it cost me was a train ticket, and maybe grab like a cup of coffee. And I felt bad. I felt kind of bad because I really wanted to take her out on nice dinner dates, but I had like X amount of savings that I was burning through just by dating her.
Yeah.
And I told her, I said, look, like, I don't have much money. I promise you, when I get a job, I'll take you out to that dinner. Not that she was demanding it. Not she never guilt tripped me about it. It was never like, oh, but other people. It was never about that. It was entirely my own desire to want to take her out for something special. And I told her, I said, look, eventually I will get a job and we'll make this kind of thing happen. And I did. I made good on my word. And this is actually the same company I've been with for a while now. And I'm working my way up and negotiating more and more money.
Good for you.
Lately.
Good for you.
Thanks. So things have been good, and now it's like, hey, look, like things are so much better than they were when we started dating. It's awesome.
Well, I think there's something to like coming up together, right? Like I don't have anything. Like we're gonna build this together, because like you said yourself, like there were times when your father was deeply unhappy. There was times your mom was not happy, but you kind of weather those storms. And part of weathering the storms is like, hey, remember when we lived in that crappy apartment and we didn't have any furniture and the TV was on the crates. Like look at what we have now. Like we have a home, we have kids. Like are we really going to we'll just say throw it away or give up on all this? It's like, no, we've come too far. Let's keep going. Because I mean, how long did you date your wife for before you got married?
We've been, let's see, October 2017. So you just about 3.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, 3 years before we got married.
Pretty good, because
3 whole years. No, we're not.
So some people say, hey, your age kind of prevented you from getting married sooner, right? Like if you were 23,
that and money, yeah.
But like when you're 18, it's like, hey, I'd like to marry you, but we're 18, so like let's wait a little bit. But I think what you get from that though is like life happens. Like that happened for me and my wife. Like life happened, and because we met so young, so like people got sick, people were in the hospital, like bad things happened, and it was like, well, how are we going to react to this together? Like, how are you going to react? How am I going to react? Like when you meet young, like it gives you more time to kind of, I guess, vet is the best way to put it. It's like I've seen you when so and so was in the hospital, my family member was in the hospital, and I saw how you came through, because I know that a marriage isn't just freaky sex and romantic dinners and getaways. It's like, no, it's people end up in the hospital, like sick kids, sick family members, like that happens. Like how do you react now? It's like, oh, you're not even my wife yet, and this is how you react. Oh, okay, I'm never going to leave you, because I saw it already. I know.
Yeah, that happened. That was 1 year into our relationship, and her grandmother had cancer and came up here to the States from Mexico to kind of get that treated. And she was in a hospital down in the Bronx, and it was this whole, back and forth. And I was driving them back and forth from the hospital, and it was this. Been there, done that. Yeah. We went through that, and it's that's exactly what happens. You give your relationship a year or two, and you'll find most of the problems or things that are not problems that you're really going to appreciate about the person.
They're not out of your control. Nobody did anything wrong. It's just, hey, here's life. How are you gonna show up? Because like I'm sure that went a long way. Like, hey, Andrew, you don't make a lot of money, but when my grandma had cancer, you were there driving us. Like, not only for her, but the family, right? Like they see that, and it's like, oh, okay. So say something happens, like, oh no, Andrew, we know Andrew. We saw what he did when Abuela was sick. So like, don't you get the pressure from her family? Don't mess this up, because we saw what he did, and I think that's kind of the extended family doesn't come into play. It's not so much just like you and her. It's like, well, how do you fit in her family, but how does she fit in your family also? Like that's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, when you're dealing with Mexican families, it's almost inevitable. Everything's big.
Mhm.
Her dad is the youngest of 12 kids.
Mhm.
She's got uncles on her dad's side that are the same age as her grandfather on her mom's side, so they like grew up together and were friends. It's really funny hearing stories about that. Like, oh, grandpa's friends with my uncle because my uncle's older than my other grandpa. It's this funny dynamic. Whereas my family is, my mom is an immigrant from France here to the States, and then her parents are immigrants from Algeria, so North Africa, to France. So everyone's kind of just been moving around the world. And my dad's family all pretty much like, they're German, Austrian, Norwegian immigrants, but they've settled down here in New York for a while. So like my dad grew up in a town 10 minutes from where we live right now. Like he hasn't moved very far at all. So it's just interesting. But then I only have two aunts, he only has two sisters. My mom only has 4 siblings. So I have a relatively small family. I mean, if you go into my mom's extended family, my mom's got like 40, 50 cousins. Right. But for me, I can count on one hand. I got 4 cousins.
Yeah.
I got 3 on my dad's side, 1 on my mom's side. No one else on my mom's side got married. Whereas you look at my wife and her family, I'm like, okay, I've met her entire maternal family. I've met maybe a fraction of her dad's family. Yeah. And when making wedding plans, like you can't even invite these people. There's just too many. We can't afford that. Yeah. So it's like, let's invite grandma. Let's invite like that one aunt and uncle who live here.
Yeah, and then maybe everyone else, and then maybe the few that will be able to make the trip. Right? What part of Mexico?
Michoacan.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Cotija.
Yeah.
Was one of the towns
there. Have you gone down there yet or no?
No, they're here so that they don't get shot. They get the whole narco problem down there. Her town is kind of rife with that. So, and her town has just been progressively getting worse and worse and worse. So, like every now and then you'll hear stories back of like, "Hey, what's going on down there?" It's like, they're at the point where like the bodies are hanging from like the church steeple now. Like it's not pretty.
Yeah.
So. Maybe like Cancun, at some point, like maybe there's nice touristy areas, a resort here or there will be a cool place to go when all the immigration stuff is sorted out. But for now, it's like, we're not going to go back to your town.
That's funny though what you say though about like the extended family, because it's like, like I remember as a kid, it'd be like, hey, this is your cousin, and you'd be like, okay, hi.
Who the hell is that guy?
Hi, you give him a hug, and then you go run off and play. It's like, hey, this is your Thea. Exactly. It's like, oh, you're so big now. It's like, I don't remember you, but here's like,
who the hell are you?
Hug and a kiss. All right, go play. But I mean, the really cool, because I have one side that was my parents are both Mexican, but my dad grew up in the States. Like he was born in Mexico, but like schooled and everything in the States. And then my mom grew up in Mexico, was from Mexico, and then when they got married, came over here. But like like when I would go to Mexico, like we always got treated like kings, man. Like oh, what do you want to eat? Like, what do you want to eat? Oh, what can I do for you? So that's why, like, for me, like hearing that like there's just no good women, it's like I was surrounded by good women, like women who like just treated me like I was, and it was all my cousins. So it wasn't just like me, because we would come in and visit, because we were in the States, and come over and visit. So like it was like nice, because it's like, oh, like the Lopez's are here, like that side of the family is here. But it was like all my cousins, even the ones that lived there, like they got not doted on, but like we all got treated like, oh, let's take all the kids to the park. Like that's what my uncles did, that took us to the park, and our Theas would feed us. And it was like I think I'm lucky for sure, because like you hear people's stories about like how they weren't treated well, but like when people say like, oh, there's no good women, it's like I don't know about that. Like I was
just go look at fun.
I'm surrounded by good ones. So I mean,
a lot of it is just self-inflicted. It's like you're sitting in your basement and you're like, there are no good jobs. I'm like, you didn't even bother looking for one. You're just there. This and then these people, like, where are they going? I was watching these two YouTubers I really like. Abba and Preach are these 2 black gentlemen from Canada, and they're those kind of like they'll do reaction videos, and they're really, really intelligent guys, and I really like hearing what they have to say, and they're also really funny. And one of them was invited onto this podcast, and I was watching him kind of chat with the people hosting the podcast, and usually the people hosting this podcast always have like the woman who are from the club and all that kind of stuff hanging out. So they're really kind of ditzy, and the things they talk about, you go like, man, this is ridiculous and stupid. And he kind of called them out on it. He goes like, every time I hear people say like they're a no good woman, he's like, where are you looking? Mm-hmm. Like, where do you find like, or you hear like the horror stories of like, she did this and she threw all my clothes off her balcony, and like and she's like, where do you find someone like mm-hmm. that? Like you went to the club and you were like, oh, I'm going to find my little trad housewife. Like, no. She's not hanging out there waiting for you because she figured you're probably not going to be hanging out there mm-hmm. either, if you're really the kind of person you say you are.
Do you think there's an element of luck to like you finding your wife?
I would say so. I think a tiny bit. You want to be in the right place at the right time, and and it's so easy to pass by mm-hmm. each other. But at the same time, I think if you're doing the right thing in your life, there's a selection of people who are the right people. I don't really buy into this concept of there's only one person out there that's right mm-hmm. for you. I think based on the different directions that you develop yourself in, there's a selection of people. There are probably maybe other women out there that I could be happy with. I don't have to consider that anymore because it's pointless and it's a moot mm-hmm. point. But if I hadn't met my wife, I'm sure I would find someone else eventually that'll kind of fulfill those needs. And who knows? I'm not going to stack them all side by side and be like, well, you rank here because you're like, you're prettier, but you don't know how to cook. And I'm not going to go through that. No one, and you shouldn't really have to, because when you find the one person that you do end up marrying, you just commit to them, and then you're not really comparing them to anyone.
Yeah. That's a good correctly. That's very wise, because the comparison can rob you of your joy, and
it'll kill you. But at the same time, it's impossible to not compare in a way. You're never there's always going to be a subconscious element. Like if you have a bitchy girlfriend who is always on you and nagging you, and then you got a buddy who's got the sweetest, most loving girlfriend who's always taking care of him and is awesome. You may not try to consciously compare them, but you are going to eventually be like, huh, she's really sweet, and I'm always getting yelled at. Like there's something here that's not so nice. And you don't want to get stuck and married to someone where then you'll end up in that context where you end up looking at someone else and go like, man, I really got the short end of the stick here, huh?
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that the person you do settle down with has a lot of things going for them, so that the moment comparison pops in your head, you can just brush it off instantly and go, well, you know what? She's pretty. She can cook. She can clean. She's super smart. She's great with kids. Like there's so much stacked in her favor that the moment like you even think about comparing her to someone else, you're already like, yeah, but she's got all these other things anyway. So, screw it. Like I got the better end of the bargain.
Yeah. Are a lot of your friends getting married, or you're the kind of the first one?
I'm one of the first, but I'm getting to that point where I just got a wedding invite from my best friend.
Oh, no way.
So that means a trip out to Ohio. Yeah, so I met him and his girl. Well, I met him. I grew up with him. I met his girlfriend just this past Christmas when they came to visit, because his family lives right down the road from me, like 2-minute drive, 5-6 minute walk. So they're close. So when he came to visit, he brought his girlfriend along, and I got to meet them. And I knew he was planning on proposing. I didn't know he was planning on proposing like early May and then getting married in August. Didn't realize the timeline was that fast. But next thing you know, he's so bad at updating me on his life that I finally was like, dude, did you propose yet? He's like, oh yeah, I did a couple weeks ago. By the way, we're getting married in August. The invite's in the mail right now. I'm like, he could have told me. Like, I should have to like prompt you for this to get it. But so yeah, that's happening. Yep.
All right, had to take a little brief interlude, but you were talking about your buddy in Ohio. He's getting married.
Yeah, so I got one friend of mine who's getting married soon. I got another who I know is planning on proposing soon, and then he's hoping to get married by the end of the year. So when you're dealing with young Christian couples, this is the age, like, whereas, like I said, everyone else, the average is 27 to 35. Our average age is probably like 19 to 25.
Oh, really?
I have this girl that I follow on Instagram that I made friends with in camp at like one of the Christian camps I went to with my youth group. And she got married right out of college. Sorry. So she and her husband now got married, a couple months ago. And then I just saw a picture on her Instagram story yesterday of her roommate who just got married. And I'm like, and I felt bad, but I'm like, these people still look like kids. Like, I know I look young. I look young for my age too. But I'm like, this kid looks like he's at the prom at his own wedding. Like, and I texted to my wife. I'm like, I know this is really bad, but like, this is funny. And she goes, oh,
and there's nothing wrong with laughing, right? Like
no,
that's kind of part of it.
And you know what? God bless them. You know, I always talk about getting married young, and these are the people actually out on the front lines doing it, and you know, ultimately good for them.
What was I gonna say? Do you think? Well, I think, like, because you know you're Christian, but because I was Christian, but I went to a mega church, so like I don't think I really grew up in like church culture. Like I was a public school kid. We went to church. There's like these big churches in California, Calvary Chapel. Like I was never a part of like youth group or anything. I always thought I was kind of like nerdy. It's like I could think of a lot of other things I'd rather be doing on a Saturday night. And I'm not even talking about like I wasn't even a party guy. It's just like, no, youth group does not sound like sound like
the new Assassin's Creed just came out, man.
Yeah. You know, like I'd rather like, you know, go to my buddies and we'd play Madden or, you know, whatever. Cause that's I don't know. Like I had a friend who got married the year before me, but then nobody got married until like maybe like 10 years later. And it was like, I just had like one of my buddies, like, so it was the year before Rona. So 2 years ago, he probably like the last one. And then I think that my other buddies, I don't think they're going to get married.
Just like straight up,
the boat's passed, they have kid, they have, you know, like a kid each, but I don't know if they're gonna get married. Like, so like, you know, that's kind of like that was my friend group. So then when I see like, you know, your story and I hear that, it's like, oh, that's very encouraging, because I like I said, I think it's good. Like, when you see people who are wanting to make decisions and stuff, and like they're not married and don't have kids, it's like you think way different when you're married, but then when you have kids on top of it, like you think way different. Like, you know, me, even, you know, 10 years ago, my thought processes are way different because I have children. So like, I'm not just thinking about me. It's like, I'm thinking about like, what is the world going to look like for my children? And no, I'm not.
It changes everything.
Yeah, I'm not okay with it.
It changes absolutely everything.
Like the music I listen to.
Yeah, the little things, it's the little details. I saw this really cool 4chan post, and this guy was talking about it. He was like, you know, I was this broke, depressed guy living in the basement. You know, I had a girlfriend who kind of resented me in a dead end job, and then she accidentally got pregnant, and turns out that, you know, plan B wasn't an option. We weren't going to abort the kids. So we were like, well, you know what, then screw it. We're going to have it, and I'm going to be the best dad I can. And next thing you know, he's like, now I've got a plumbing apprenticeship lined up, and I've got a good starting rate, and I'm fitter than I ever have been. And like he starts getting his life in order for this kid, and he realized like my relationship with my girlfriend is better now. Like everything just starts getting better for him because now he's got this drive with a kid. And there's a stat via the highest, on average, the people who earn the highest amount of money are married men. And the reason is just because they have someone to provide for it. And that's a really hard driving force. I'm in the process of negotiating a second raise with my boss right now.
Oh, nice.
And
because I think he had tweeted something about like he just got one. So
I had just gotten a raise because I kind of threatened to quit. They need me. I knew that they needed me, and I said if I threaten to quit, they're gonna throw more money at me, and I knew that. And so I sent an email putting in my 2 weeks, and like we're crazy right now. Imagine you start a job at FedEx during Christmas time. That's kind of how it is hiring new people at our job right now. We had one guy who came in for 2 days, never walked back in.
It's too much.
Like just didn't no text, no call, just didn't show up. We had another girl at our counterpart store that's like 15 minutes away. Apparently quit in the middle of the day 2 days ago. Just be like, screw this, I'm done. So they need people. I'm one of the most skilled there. So I went, you know what? Screw this. I'm leaving unless you guys can give me better hours or better pay. And they were like, well, we can definitely pay you more. So cool. And then I told the regional manager when I chatted with him a couple of days ago, I said, look, man, I'm looking for other opportunities. I need to make more money. He's like, and he's kind of joking with me. He's like, damn it, man. Like I just gave you more money. Like what do I need to give you to get you to stay? And I was like, well, I don't really know. Like I said, I have a wife to take care of. I'd like to be able to support the family on my own income, which we can't do right now. So the more the better. You know, I have other people than just myself that I got to think about. This isn't money for me to buy the latest PlayStation now. This is money for me to pay bills and get food for us.
Yeah.
And for her. And so at that point, that becomes more of a driving force. So I texted him, actually. I said, look, man, I was picking her up from her parents' house and we were heading home. And I had texted him. I said, look, man, I have a definitive answer to that question of how are you going to get me to stay? So give me a call when you get the chance. And sure enough, we're driving home and my phone rings and I pick it up. And I was like, hey, John, what's up? You know? So, yeah, if you give me X amount of money, like you got me through till at least our October wedding, probably later than that, because all the jobs I find are probably going to be comparable in money and they don't factor in overtime and stuff like that. So he goes, I still got to think about it, or not think about it. He's like, I got to talk to certain people about it because it's not my call to make. So give me until Monday or Tuesday. So we're in the process of waiting for that Monday or Tuesday. And my wife's looking over at me like, holy crap. I can't believe you just did that. I'm like, oh, you know your worth, you know what you value.
Yeah, but I'm sure that worked out to your benefit with the wife, because it's just like something about like, oh, my man is like putting his foot down, and not putting it like, but standing his ground in something like that goes a long way.
One, it's attractive, and hell, even my boss, like my regional manager, when he saw me that day, just a few days ago, after I had negotiated the first raise, he immediately shook my hand. He's like, I'm really proud of you, man. He goes, I never would have had the guts to do what you did. And that felt really, really good. And it's just, you know how it's kind of funny, you know, when a restaurant messes up your order and you're like, it's no big deal. Like, I don't really care. But then they mess up your buddy's order and you're like, nah, I got you. Like, I'm going to go talk to you. It's kind of the same thing. Like, you know, maybe for yourself, when you're by yourself, you go, okay, I'm not getting paid great, but it's kind of okay. But when you have someone else to take care of, you're like, look, this ain't personal. I got people that I got to take care of. So you got to give me more money. And it's a lot easier to ask for that and to push for that when you have that driving force behind you.
You know, it's your girl. Like, hey, because she never asked for things, I want her to have things. I think that kind of sums up most, like a good man, right? Like, she never asked for fancy anything. She took me when I had nothing. So because she took me when I had nothing, I want her to have everything.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, it's a driving force for sure. And I think having that for most young men is a really good thing. You know, sometimes to make someone responsible, you got to give them a little bit of responsibility, you know. And it's funny, you can take maybe not the most, but you can take a pretty wayward kid, you know, the kid who's not the most responsible, and you can say, hey, I got a couple other kids that I need you to take care of for, like, you know, a couple hours while I'm out doing something. Can you do that? And my brother is maybe, we think he might be somewhere on the autism spectrum, very, very, very mildly, but it's clear that he's not as mature as most kids his age. So he's lagging behind by a couple years. Nothing particularly noticeable, no like speech impediments, no things like that, just a little bit behind in his age, and he'll catch up eventually. But when you tell him, hey, I need you to watch these, he seems like the kind of guy you don't want to trust with any responsibility. Like, look, man, like, just don't trust him with anything. But when you actually give him responsibility, you say, look, take care of these kids for a little while, do this, do that. He actually kind of jumps into action and he handles it really, really well. And so I think a lot of people just need to be given a little bit more responsibility progressively, so that then, you know, they can, they test themselves. They kind of come out a little bit more confident because now they know I can do this. And two, it makes you grow up a little bit. You know, we get these people who are in their mid-20s. They're acting like they're still in high school. Yeah. And it's like, you're not anymore. You're a grown man. I love when parents try making excuses for the young adult men that they have in their lives. And I see that all the time. I'm like, I get, you know, 40, 50, 60-year-old parents coming in and they're trying to shop for their son who's not there. And they're like, well, I can't get him in because he hates shopping. So like, he's, you know, he just doesn't want to come. For their wedding? Like, I had one guy who was kind of like that. Yeah, but mostly for like casual clothes.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, this guy's in his mid-20s. Like, he's an adult. He's got to stop acting
still
like
shopping.
And sometimes, yeah. It's embarrassing. And I love when they try to make excuses. They're like, well, you know how they are. I'm like, lady, I'm 22 and married. I don't know how that is. Like,
yeah, I really don't. I don't know this.
I don't get it. That's not me.
You know, you're really smart and perceptive in that way, because like I coached high school football, and we'd have these freshman boys, and it was like a tougher area, but we would be hard on them, like really hard on them up front, because it was like we wanted to kind of weed out guys who were just kind of like wanted to be on the team, because there was like guys who's like, oh, I'm a football player, like, no, I don't, we don't want you, because we're gonna
they're using it as a pickup line.
Yeah, I don't know what I never same thing, I never understood that, like, hey, I'm here to ball, like I'm trying to play, like I'm not trying to be like, oh, I'm on the team and that was like good enough. So we were trying to get rid of those guys. We'd be really hard on them, and like guys that you wouldn't think of, they would step up. Like because they loved it. They loved the accountability that we like, because we would say, this is what we're going to do, this is what the standard is, and then we would hold them to the standard. And it wasn't anything about like athletic ability or anything. It would just be like, be on time. Like, if you're going to do this, you're going to run through full speed. I know what full speed looks like. That's not it. We're doing it. And so they would see all these things, and then what would happen is, we were not a good football team, but like a couple of weeks in, like they would tell their buddies, like, hey, come out. And so we would get more kids coming out, because they wanted the accountability. They wanted to feel responsible about something. And it was like, these boys have never had to be responsible for, like, they coast through school. Like, this is a public school. They coast through school. Like, they don't do their homework and stuff like that. But we would check on them, like, hey, oh, you're not eligible. Guess what? We're all running. And so it was like, oh, like they actually care about our grades. Like, they're actually, because like some coaches are like, they think they're like Bill Belichick or something, and trying to like, win championships. Like, no, I just want these kids to have a place where it's like, I really like football. It's actually like, one of my favorite things, but like, I want you to have a place where you can feel accountable about something. You have control about something. You have like the power to exert your force on, another person, and it's completely okay. And they really ate it up. Well, because aren't you doing MMA? And I remember hearing.
I've done that. Yeah, it's been a while since I've trained, so it's been way too long. But yeah, you get the same thing.
How was that? Because I wrestled for a little bit, and I've always kind of wanted to do MMA, but it's always like, I got kids, I got stuff going on. But how was that? I wanted to actually speak to you about that.
It's kind of like, like most gyms, when you go in and everyone's really nice and cool because they're all there for the same reason, and that's to get better. Mm-hmm. MMA gym's even more tight knit because you're actually interacting with those people inherently. You have to. It's not like, oh, I'm going to go in my corner, do my squats with my headphones in, and then just leave. Yeah. You have to interact with those people. It's a group environment, and usually you're rotating and training. So like when they have open rolling on the mat, it's like, okay, you're paired with this guy, and then it's like, all right, now find a new partner. And so you're really close to people. Like if you have personal space issues, you can't do jujitsu because some guy's crotch in your face.
On it. Yeah.
Like, this is nasty. You're getting choked out by his legs.
I smell his balls right now.
Yeah, exactly. It happens. But everyone is the nicest person ever, because it's so easy to build rapport with someone that, you're working with in such close proximity, both physically and almost, really physically is the primary section. So, people they're just cool people. Also because they respect you, and you're all beating each other up. There's not like, okay, that's the wimpy nerd and he's an asshole and nobody likes him, so he's just going to stay there in the corner. Like, everyone's involved. Everyone's cool. The coaches facilitate an environment of, this is a cool place to be. Everyone gets to know you by name instantly. Right. So you feel welcome. You're there 2 days and you feel like, okay, this is my gym. These are my people, and they all know me. And so that's all. I don't know if all gyms are like that, but I would imagine most are, because that's kind of just the natural, I think, environment that comes out of men training to fight each other. It's, as long as there's nothing personal and you don't come to resent anyone, it's a really, really cool place and thing to do. And it kicks your butt. It kicks your butt so bad. I had like my first day of open mat rolling, and I woke up the next day, my throat is sore all the way around. I had like a 200-pound guy put like all of his body weight through his knee onto my chest, so I'm like sore. It was like, every movement hurts, but it feels awesome. Yeah. Like, I can't wait to do this again.
The physicality of it it's underrated for me, because I think, it's been a while since I played. It's been a long time since I played sports, but like sometimes I do miss the pain that you would wake up with, like,
the days after. It's like, oh, like
So
that
sad.
the I'm alive and I'm using my body, and that I now it's maybe I don't miss it as much because I have kids, and so I'm the jungle gym. So there's
Right, they're all hanging off you anyway.
there's that, but there is the part that's like, oh, like it'd be really cool to get some aggression out. I mean, I'm a lot less, like, not that I was ever like a very aggressive dude, but like I'm a man, so like there's things I want to get.
It's natural
Yeah,
level.
how long did you do? Was it like a few months that you had done it for? Because I mean, you're pretty busy with
Yeah,
school and work and fiance.
Yeah, it was the commute that kind of killed it because it was a little bit of a trip, and then COVID.
Oh.
They were actually operating during COVID. They did a whole like, we got curtains up front, just come in the back, don't wear masks. So everyone was cool because then you it was the only place I could go to physically where no one was wearing masks and everyone was just like, yeah, it's all BS and we all know it. So let's like cut the crap. So it felt like you weren't crazy. You're like, okay, there's other people in person, not just on Twitter, that have the same viewpoint as me. So that was refreshing. But I started working full time right around then. So I started in December, trained really consistently. I was there, I think, 2 times a week. One day was like just jujitsu. One day was just kickboxing. The other day was kickboxing and jiu-jitsu. And that was really consistent until about March, and then COVID hit, and then I stopped for a little bit, and then they kind of reopened the gym after a brief period of time, or I don't even know if they ever closed. So I started going back, but they only did it in the evenings. And so like I got out of my job right around the time that they started. So by the time I would get down there, it would have been halfway through the session anyway, or probably ending. So it wasn't really possible. So I want to go back. It's one of those things I figure when I get married, when I settle down, and or when we kind of get all the other financial stuff settled, and I'm have a more consistent schedule, and she hopefully doesn't have to work. So on my days off, I can spend them entirely with her instead of having my constantly moving schedule, hoping that they kind of line up on a day where I don't have work and she doesn't. That's kind of been the challenge. So when all that settles down, hopefully I'll be going back at some point and just getting my butt kicked.
I think one of the things that I would do different through my marriage is just like have an outlet. Like this podcast is kind of an outlet for me now. Like because before, I coached, but then that takes up a lot of time. So then, like, when we had kids, it was like, okay, like that's that season. We're gonna kind of put that on the back burner. I'd like to get back to, because it's really one of my favorite things. And then I'm a big football fan, so Saturdays was like my football day. But then it's like, well, I need to be doing something productive, and that's not really productive. So that was one of the cool things with Corona, like I'm working from home, so I spent more time on Twitter. I met you. David was huge, like, because I was not that I'm anybody, but it was just like I kind of saw Coach Joe Hart kind of, I kind of came in, and then I saw David reached out to me, and like I was like, oh, this this guy's really cool, and then introduced me to you, and all these other people. And it's like, oh, this is a place where I can kind of have an outlet, and then doing the podcast, because like I've always wanted to do a podcast, but like that, like me on Twitter is kind of like me trying to figure out like, who do I want to talk to. That's kind of how I've been using it, and it's just like, oh, like this is kind of an outlet. So like if you can keep an outlet, and obviously physical, and that's part of it too, right? Like you have like people who are talking about fitness and stuff like that. So it's like, oh yeah, fitness. Like I always kind of use like Twitter to kind of like brainwash me. Like I work out more than I have, and really since I like played sports, because before I would just kind of like go and just do stuff in the weight room, and like now it's like you connect with these fitness guys. It's like, oh, they have like some of them post like workouts. It's like, oh, I can do this. Like they're giving me a workout to do. And I've met people in real life. Like I met Tyler Tote and Joey Devlin and his girl Kelly and Mackenzie, and it's like, oh, this is something like really, really cool. But like if you can get back to the MMA, to make the point, is like keep that thing in there, because it's you're gonna need the outlet, and especially when God willing, the kids come and all that. Like who was I talking to? Who was I talking to? I was talking to somebody, but it was like, like if you can keep these habits before like you get married and you get busy, like it'll already be part of you. So it's a lot easier to do it going in than to try and add it once you're kind of already in the kind of like craziness of wife, kids, and all that.
For sure. Yeah, one of the things I loved you said was talking about the responsibility and how when you give it to those kids or the accountability, when you give it to those kids in that kind of football environment, it really, really helps kids, even in a rough area. Because that reminds me, I was rewatching some of Jordan Peterson's older videos, some of the really good ones where he talks about like the way a lot of young men that he talks to, their eyes kind of light up when you start talking about responsibility and how kind of shocking that is, because that's not something you would ever kind of intuitively, I guess, what would you say? I guess it's not something that seems intuitive. We'll put it that way. You don't automatically think, hey, maybe if I give kids more problems to think about and more burdens to carry, that they'll actually be happier. But that certainly seems to be the case, particularly with young men. Like if you make them responsible for something, there's something about having that for most of them, and obviously not all, but for the vast majority of them, it causes, like he said, their eyes to light up, and it excites them because it's something transcendent in a way. I always like talking about things that are transcendent and things that are aspirational, because it's something that so few people get. So few people, at least that you come across in the street, understand. So when I talk to people, like I did a piece at my school, a journalism piece, because I was a journalism minor, on the architecture of the school. And when you talk to kids about it, you go, I would complain about the architecture because we are one of the ugliest schools in the country, and I mean that sincerely. Like like if you Google that, like top 10 ugliest college campuses, I think we rank like number 3. Like it's awful. The buildings are these brick like squares. There's nothing special about them. Most of them don't even have windows. It looks like a prison. And so when I say, look, like architecture matters, this, and when I rant about it, the other students just look at me like, I don't get why it matters.
What's the big
But then
deal?
you interview them, you go like, yeah, but then you interview them, you go like, what do you think about this campus? Like, how does it make you feel? And they're like, I feel like I'm in a mental asylum. I'm like, see, that's why it matters. And having some aspirational architecture, having something that looks like there is an attempt to be bigger than we are, or to do something greater than we are, and put this kind of beauty and put in details that are designed to hearken to things that are bigger than us, matters. You look at Notre Dame or any kind of cathedral, and you see all the stained glass windows and depictions of Jesus and the angels that they have, and even the gargoyles. And you look at those details and you go, okay, this is transcendent. This is meant to be about something bigger than us. Again. And having that is awesome. Having that's important, but getting people to kind of think beyond what's right in front of them and think beyond getting paid and getting laid can kind of be a little bit of a challenge.
Getting laid. Oh my gosh, that's it.
Yeah, that's what drives a lot of people, and I get it. But that's why when you find someone who cares about these transcendent things, when you find someone who cares about honor, loyalty, these kind of ideals, responsibility, let's say, then when you find someone that connects with you on that, it's like, man, this person gets it, and you feel an immediate kinship with them. And that's what I mean, that's why you guys like you and I, we find ourselves on Twitter, because we're like, well, I can't, it's hard to find that out on the street, because either most people aren't like that, or kind of like the mask thing when it was going on. Like now in New York, we've kind of lifted our mandates. So now it's really interesting social experiment, because you can see who's rabidly anti-mask. So that's people like me. Like I don't wear one for anything other than my job anymore, because my employer makes me. I don't wear it anywhere else, no matter what, at this point. Then you get people who are still like, well, I need to wear it everywhere because I still don't feel safe. And then you get the people who are like, well, I'm going to wear it because everyone else is wearing it and I don't want to look different. And it's, back in the day, you couldn't tell where people stood because it was the absolute rule, and you were going to get kicked out of the store if you didn't wear it. So if you saw someone with it on, you were like trying to figure out, do they care? Do they actively support this? Do they secretly resent it? And it's kind of the same thing when you talk about kind of transcendent ideals. Like you walk past someone on the street, you're like, maybe that guy cares about honor and loyalty and those kinds of things, but he's not going to shout it on the street to you because you're not his audience. Twitter is kind of like a giant, it's just a bunch of people with megaphones just yelling in a room, and you start like finding the people that are using the same buzzwords as you, and you're like, you know what? Like you hear honor, kind of shouting in the corner, and you go, okay, like this, that makes sense to me. So I'm going to go hang out with those guys. And that's how these little communities form, is like you all kind of have this massive overlap. And that's why like money Twitter and fitness Twitter and men's lifestyle Twitter, there's a giant Venn diagram, and they primarily overlap over just self-improvement, because that's a transcendent ideal on its own. Getting better than you currently are. That and aspirational, like I said, it's getting better than you currently are.
That's good, man. I think,
we went a little over because I think, you know, I had my little bathroom break that I had to go on, but I mean, we got on a roll here. I usually ask if, you know, there's something to say, but I think what you just said right now kind of stands on its own, the transcendent. It's like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense because, you know, I enjoy small talk because that's how you kind of get your foot in the door. Like, you don't just start off and be like, hey man, what do you think about God? Or, you know,
Yeah, right.
you know, hey man, you trying to get paid and get laid? Like, you know, like you don't start off on that stuff. Like, you know, you kind of work your way in. But like, yeah, like you know, eventually, like, yeah, like, hey, what do you really think about? What do you really think about, you know, life? You know, what's the good life? Like, oh, you know, we don't have to agree. I don't have to agree with you on everything, but hey, we want to make, you know, we don't want to make it worse. How about we start there, and then you know, how can we make it better, and where do we agree on that? Oh, you know, we want to build families. Cool. Like, yeah, cool. Like, let's do that. Like, and then like, hey, you know, you want to build the kingdom? Oh, for sure. Let's roll, baby. Like, let's build that. But man, this has been a lot of fun, Andrew. This is I'm glad that we connected. Shout out to David if you listen to this one, man. Thanks for connecting us. This is Andrew Loeschner. You can find him on Twitter at Andrew Loeschner, AndrewLoeschner. The man is based commentary. Get some in spades. Andrew, thanks for coming.
I'm gonna have to put that in my bio. Thank you so much for having me, Joel. I really appreciate it.